Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Logocentric. My name is Daxton Page, and today we are going to be talking about what I believe is the highest virtue. So if you had to guess, what would you assume is the highest virtue human beings could act out? Would you think it's empathy, right? That's certainly a good one, right? The ability to see things from another person's perspective. That's a very, very valuable skill and can actually garner a lot of great community growth and like a sense of camaraderie. It's a great thing to have empathy. It's something that we identify as a hallmark of being a good person. But I do not think it's the highest virtue. What are the other virtues? Like compassion, right? You should always just be compassionate, right? So I think that's something that, again, sounds very good. If you're a compassionate person, that sounds like you're a good person. I would like to hang out with a compassionate person. So I'm still not convinced, though, that it's the highest virtue. And I'm not gonna lie. It does, from what I've heard, like from popular, love, empathy, the sort of hippie movement. These are the highest virtues. Be compassionate, be loving, and just love. Everything is love. Now, listen, I really do think that like love is extremely important. I'm not trying to diminish these virtues as to say that they're useless. What I'm trying to offer is perspective. Now, what do I think is the highest virtue? I believe it was the Buddha who said the highest virtue is discernment, right? Discernment? What? I've never heard of that as being a high virtue. I'm always hearing about empathy and compassion and love, right? Well, I think discernment is a little more important because it allows you to have perspective. It allows you to separate the false illusion of things like empathy and the illusion of things that may seem like compassion or may seem like love, but in fact are not. All right, let's start with the easy one. Let's start with love, right? How many times have you thought, oh, this is the one, this is the girl, or this is the guy, whoever, this is the one person I'm going to end up, spending the rest of my life with. This is the person I love. I can't see myself with anybody else, right? And then out of nowhere, you find out that they're cheating on you. It's like, what? I thought there was this thing that we had. I thought we loved each other, right? But it turns out one person in this party was putting forth a persona, an illusion, a story, a fake story that they were in love with you, but really they were just using you. But you couldn't tell the difference. Wait a minute. If you couldn't tell the difference, that's a problem. Because now you're open to being taken advantage of people who do know that you're gullible, so they can just get what they want from you, put up this false persona of love, and they can get what they want out of you and then disregard you when they're done, right? How many times have you felt like that with an ex, whatever, right? So that sort of discernment to be able to see the difference between someone who is legitimately committed to you and someone who is genuinely trustworthy and is like they love you. There is reciprocal love there, right? And the difference between that and someone who is just taking advantage of you, right? Discernment is more powerful than love in this scenario because it allows you to see the types of love that can be manipulative, and that's not even love if you're manipulating somebody, right? So love can be something that's pathologized. It can be pushed to an extreme, and I don't think that that's something that's very healthy, obviously. I mean, if you heard this story so far, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't say, no, it's okay to take advantage of people and tell them that I love them just so I can, sleep with them or whatever whatever you're trying to get out of them, right? I don't think anybody would agree that that's a good, way to live life or that's a good presupposition, right? I don't think most people would buy that, right? So love can be pathologized. What was the other one? Compassion, right? Oh, compassion. I'm going to be compassionate, right? Well, think of it like this. You could give some money away, right? You could be compassionate, right? Well, what happens, you give somebody $5, oh, I wanted to be compassionate. And then somebody else notices that. And then they come up and say, hey, can I have $5? And so you give them $5 because you're being compassionate. What happens if people start to take advantage of you being compassionate, right? And you can't discern from people who are genuinely in need and people who are just trying to take advantage of your compassion, right? So the homeless person example, right? It's like eventually a bunch of homeless people come up to you and you give away all your money and you have no money left, right? So what good did your compassion do you there? Well, you got all these homeless people some money, right? Well, how many of them are actually going to use that, in a way that's going to bring them out of homelessness, right? Or how many people are just going to go blow it on whatever, right? And then you're left there. You don't have any money to get take a bus home, or luckily if you have a car, thank goodness, but now you have no money, right? So what if you run out of gas? You have no money to pay for gas, right? You just kind of screwed yourself in the name of just being compassionate, right? So everyone knows that you don't just give all your money to a homeless person, right? Even though they would think of that as a very generous thing, it doesn't seem very practical, right? Because it can also be taken advantage of. There's lots of homeless people that, some people aren't even homeless. I've seen people who are on the corner, get up off the corner, go to their vehicles and drive off. Right now, whether they go to a home or to a new corner, that's another story. I have no idea. But the whole idea of they live on the corner, I've seen that kind of in real life debunked. Now, that's an anecdotal example. That's not analogous for the entire country in every instance of homelessness, obviously. But I just wanted to make a point that your compassion can be pathologized. It can be pushed to a point where it's blinding you to people taking advantage of you because you just think it's this one, I have to do this or else I'm not a good person, right? So now that's an extreme situation. I don't think, again, most people would give all their money to a homeless person, right? Because they practice a higher virtue, which is discernment. Discernment allows you to see, this is a practical way to give my money away, to help one person. I can't help everybody, but if I help one person, maybe that can get him out of this position, and maybe one day he'll turn it around and help somebody else because he was once in that position, right? That's a little bit more of a scalable, practical, solution to being compassionate, just giving your money to a homeless person, other than just compassion with no discernment to who and what, just giving money to who because they asked for it because it's compassionate, right? So discernment is a little bit more of an efficient virtue to act out as a human being than just loving everything without discernment. Having compassion towards everything without discernment. Now, I will say there's nothing wrong with starting from a position of empathy or starting from a position of compassion. Like I said, it's when these things get pathologized, when they get pushed to a place where you're just exercising it for the sake of exercising it, not because it's actually beneficial to the person that you're giving it to. Right? Let me ask you something. If somebody's hooked on crack cocaine and they're broke and you give them money so that they can go score their next hit, that was mighty generous of you. Why don't you do that? Well, because you know that giving them the money is going to lead to them pushing them further down the hole, right? But if you can't discern between the two, people will just be like, well, why aren't you giving him money? He may not use it for crack cocaine. He may use it for food. It's like, what do? You get put into that conundrum if you're unable to discern between genuine compassion that's practical and will actually benefit the person who's on the receiving end of your compassion, and just manipulation. So what was the last one? We had empathy. So empathy, I wanted to throw a story along with this one. This is actually a real story, and I will change some names and details to protect the identities of the people who didn't consent to me telling this story because it's kind of private. So I knew someone who was addicted to a very, very, very hard drug, heroin, right? So watching someone go through heroin addiction is pretty rough. They get really skinny, and it's just, it's not a good deal. So what do you do in that situation? Well, this person had gotten themselves in a situation where they lost their job. They weren't showing up to work. They got fired. Didn't have enough money to pay for rent. Didn't have a place to live. So I knew this family that took him in. So they took him in and they said, we're going to provide you a place where you can come here, no rent, so you don't have to worry about finances, really. Just go and get a job so you can start saving up, right? and we'll help you with food and stuff like that because we can cook meals, and so you don't have to worry about eating out all the time and having to pay for that. So we'll have food, we'll have a place for you to shower and to sleep. He was sleeping on the couch, which isn't amazing, but it's better than a street corner, right? And so you had all this going down, and it's a very empathetic thing for a family to do, to take in someone who's essentially kind of like a stranger and say, hey, here's our couch. And you have this history of addiction and pawning off, things for drug money. So we're taking a big risk just by putting you in the house and just saying, here you go. But what a great thing. That really could have provided a great stepping stone for him to get to a better place. It really could have, So the intent obviously is a good one and a desirable one. But the person on the receiving end of it, are they on the same page? Well, this person was clean for a while, for 6 months or so, had a relapse, snuck out of the house, got picked up by a dealer, got taken to a place where he sold an old Xbox he had, and scored more junk, and then we couldn't find him. And so it was like, everyone's on the search, go find this person because, they're obviously in a bad spot. And eventually he was found and brought back to that house, and they were, kind of talking to him and stuff. And it was just very obvious that's like, okay, he had a relapse. Maybe this is a one-time thing, right? It's been 6 months. So you're going to continue to be empathetic. We're going to keep him on the couch and say, hey, listen, you made a mistake, but hey, don't play me, right? So what happens? Months go by, relapses again. They find paraphernalia in like a hidden compartment somewhere in the house. And so they have it again, and they say something that I thought would have been like, okay, we're taking rational steps. They were like, all right, if you don't take actionable steps to clean your act up, you're out of the house. And I'm like, whoa, boom. That's the true empathetic thing to do in that situation. Excuse me. That's the true empathetic thing to do in that situation. Because now you are keeping the party accountable for their actions so that they can actually better themselves. So what happened? You figure, there's this ultimatum. You're either going to go get some, get weaned off this crap, so Suboxone, you're getting medication, and go to therapy to figure out why you're doing this in the first place, because there was some family issues that he had in the past. And so go to therapy, do these things to actually take actionable steps to make your life better, or you're gone. And so I was like, yeah, good job, family. That was a good choice on their part. What happened? He went and got the medication. I think there was also like antidepressants involved as well, which seemed to help him a little bit. But what happened eventually is he just went to one session with therapy, never went back. Once he ran out of medication, things got a little dicey, and he relapsed again. But when this happened, you figure, all right, he's gone, right? That the story's over, clearly, right? No. They continued to keep him in the house. So at this point, are they really exercising empathy? Right? Now I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory that's going to put this into focus a little bit more. The family that was taking care of this particular individual had recently had a daughter move out of the house. So there's things called empty nest syndrome, where, now that you have no kid to take care of, you kind of feel like you have to take care of something and you have nothing to take care of. So the daughter left the house. And so what happened? This family, particularly the mother, started to treat this person who was addicted and going through all this shit, and was sort of cradling them or coddling them to an unhealthy degree, right? So now they're not getting really held accountable for their actions. Now they're just kind of doing what they want to do and just having to deal with a little, I'm sorry, I'll stop. And then they can go do what they want to do because you're empathetic, and you'll continue to feel bad for them. And now all of a sudden the empathy has turned into a currency that, or something that is turned into an obligation or something that they use. So, okay, give me some empathy so I can just kind of go do what I need to do, and then I'm going to sneak off and betray your trust, and then I'm going to garner more empathy. See, I have a problem, help me, and then I'm going to go do it again, and there's a cycle again. So you start to see there's a pattern of, you're being manipulated. Your empathy's being manipulated. So you had this sort of toxic brew of empty nest syndrome and an addict that was manipulating that person's empathy. It was like two pathologies that were sort of feeding off of each other. So what started out as a very empathetic pursuit, we're going to help this addict get on their feet again, because they're going through some hard times, actually turned out to be something like, well, I need something to take care of, and what a higher candidate for someone to take care of than an addict, right? And so there wasn't any concrete commitment to taking all the actions necessary to make that person make the changes in their lives necessary to get better, right? It was sort of a mutually beneficial relationship where somebody could benefit from being, as in a sense, hopeless and being catered to, and then the other person was benefiting catering to that person, right? And so there was a sort of a pathological relationship that sort of developed in that scenario. And so that's an instance where empathy, one of our highest regarded virtues, can be pathologized. Now, I'm not even going to go into all the political ways that virtues have been pathologized, because this would be like a 3-hour podcast. But I just want to say that it's not the virtues in themselves, like empathy, compassion, and love, that are, what would you say? It's not that they're just, monolithic statements that have no reason to discern where you direct it. I mean, they should be very rationally discerned from, right? You want to discern from, you want to discern from true love, false love. You want to discern from compassion and manipulation, empathy and manipulation. So I want to talk about other things too. I want to talk about things that we typically think of as not great virtues that could actually have some benefit. I want to do the inverse, essentially, of the first half of this podcast. So the second half of this is going to be focused a little bit more on things like, let's say, greed, for instance. Now, let's define what I mean by greed, because everyone's seen potentially that movie in the 80s. I even forget what it's called. I don't even remember the movie, but I remember the image where some guy was like, greed is good, right? And so I see what's trying to be said, but it's being said very sloppily, I guess you could say. So essentially when I see someone say greed is good, what they're talking about is when an individual pursues their own self-interest, that can actually be of benefit to society. That is a true statement. However, the whole idea of greed as the love of money, right, and just the sole pursuit of money and the love of money, that is greed that we don't want to condone, right? But the individual, I'm going to pursue my own self-interest, which means I'm going to try to make money to help feed my family and, accrue wealth to my family so that my family doesn't have to struggle. Those sorts of things. If people pursue their self-interests in that sense, and even if it's like, I'm going to start a business, right? I'm going to start a business, so that means I'm going to employ other people. That's going to be a benefit to other people. Because they didn't have those jobs before, and now there's those jobs, and if you're a good employer, you'll pay them a good salary, right? And so essentially by an individual pursuing their own self-interest, they can actually be of benefit to multiple individuals. So there are instances where people, what you would define as greed nowadays, would be actually someone pursuing their self-interest. In that sense, I would say greed is good. But the whole idea of greed as the love of money, maybe like you could say the biblical version of looking at greed, I don't think that's good. To put, material possessions at the highest priority and things like that. Because obviously there are more things to life than money. They've actually done lots of studies that have shown that over about $70,000 or just enough money to keep the bill collectors away, money doesn't increase your happiness or your overall happiness. So it's sort of a fallacy that we need to pursue as much money as possible, but by an individual pursuing enough self-interest that they can accrue enough money to keep the bill collectors away, that's something that could be beneficial for that individual, but that could also benefit their family. That could also benefit in the long term. Maybe that family could start a business with that wealth. They could invest it into charities. They could do lots of things, because not every individual has to start a business, right? Some people just are good working at a business. That's kind of like what they like to do. I've heard the term, there's entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, right? You have people who innovate and make the businesses, and then you have the people who are inside and run the businesses, right? So intrapreneur, entrepreneur, figure out which one you are and pursue that goal and understand which one you are. Some people feel the need that they want to be, I want to be like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and have all this money, right? Like, I've read the books, The Billionaire Mind, and everyone is thinking about, I want to have that much money, but it's not about accruing as much wealth as they have. It's about implementing the same principles so that you have a better shot of accruing more wealth than the average person who isn't implementing those strategies. Now, you wouldn't even begin to start to pursue to understand these strategies if you thought the idea of creating production, creating businesses and jobs was greed. Right? So greed is often conflated nowadays to mean things that it shouldn't, right? So for you to pursue profit by starting a business that will eventually allow you to put more money back to either invest into charities, you can invest into other businesses, right? So you can essentially keep the society going, being a productive member of society, as they would say. You have people who are arguing against that, saying that that is in fact greed because you're exploiting your workers. I'm very libertarian in this sort of aspect, where I think, if you're a worker and you show up to, work at this place and they offer you, let's say, $1 an hour, and you say, no, I'm not going to work for $1 an hour, that's stupid. And you walk away, you're no worse off than before you said no. You just got to go find somewhere else that pays more than that and just find a place that suits you, right? Negotiate your price. Or you could say, let's say he goes, I'll give you $1 an hour. And you say, I'm easily worth 15. And then he'd be like, prove it. And then if you could demonstrate your $15 an hour worth, if he was a smart businessman, he would pay you that. But he's also a very savvy businessman, so he's going to try to talk you down to like 13, right? Maybe he's going to want you to work up to 15, but he'll give you 13 for now or something like that, right? I am for individuals negotiating the price of their own labor, right? But this whole idea that like they're being exploited, I was not exploited by a company where, I felt my time was worth way more than $10 an hour, but I was getting paid $10 an hour to work at this place where you just did color correction on the computer all day, right? Was that company exploiting my labor? Well, no, because I wasn't making $10 an hour before then, and I needed the money, right? And so by me actually going and taking a job that was beneath me, quote unquote, I could go make some money to acquire a job that was right in line with me. So I'm a musician, and I found a job that sits right in line with music. It's music related. So I had to start somewhere, accrue some wealth, save up, find other positions, and work my way up. And now I've always been an entrepreneur. I've invested in like real estate a little bit. So like these are type of things that people need to know, but they kind of avoid because it's considered greed, right? So we have people running towards these virtues like empathy, compassion, and love, which are good virtues, which are actually really good virtues, but can be pathologized if pushed to extremes. I think it was Aristotle that said every virtue, when pushed to its extreme, becomes a vice, right? So I really think Aristotle hit the nail on the head there, because that is so accurate. I see that almost playing out in live action nowadays. So you have people being pushed towards these virtues to the point of pathology, and pushed away from things that could actually enable them to exude more compassion, love, empathy. Put it this way. If I'm only making $20,000 a year, I am not in a position to give back to the community as much as someone who's making $100,000 a year, or as much as someone who's making $1 million a year, $100 million a year, and so on and so forth, right? The further up the echelon you go, economically speaking, pursuing your own self-interest, the more resources you actually have available at your disposal to give back, right? The fact of the matter is, people like Bill Gates have been working on eradicating diseases from humanity with their wealth. So there's great things that can be done if individuals pursue their own self-interest to a great enough extent that they could actually benefit all of society. That has happened. It does happen continually. And I think that's why the capitalist free market system is the best system we've got, right? It's not perfect. And like Milton Friedman said, it's not that everywhere you see capitalism, you see freedom. It's everywhere you see freedom, you see capitalism as a necessary prerequisite for that sort of freedom. So there's certain things like greed that are sort of looked at as, you don't want to do that. You don't want to pursue profit. You don't want to start a business because that's considered exploitation and blah, 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 blah. I actually think that's harmful. And we're being told to, love unconditionally. It's like, it's good to start with a foundation of just having a mutual respect for people because they're individuals, right? I'm an individualist, so like I believe individuals all have their own self-worth that is divine and should be respected, right? But that doesn't mean I have to love someone unconditionally, right? Because I don't know what that person's capable of because I don't know them. Now, I trust that in a society like, let's say, America, people are decent enough that if I'm walking across the street and I'm walking towards somebody who, let's say, looks a little suspect, I have enough wherewithal to know that that's probably just a preconceived notion. Now, if the guy's coming at me with a knife in his hand and he's pointing it at me, I'm not stereotyping anymore. Now this is a real threat and I need to get out of the way, right? And so, anyway, I think when it comes down to it, there are virtues like love and compassion that, while great, can be highly overrated. Highly overrated, especially in the ways of economics and politics, right? Again, I'm not advocating for politics that is not compassionate. I'm advocating for politics that is not like, what's the word I'm looking for? Possessed by compassion. Where, like, I think it was Frederick Douglass who said, if somebody was actively coming at me with the intention of doing me good, I would run for my life, right? So what he's saying is that sometimes people pursuing their self-interest of compassion on you doesn't actually result in your life being better, but for them feeling like they were compassionate, right? So these virtues can be pathologized, and that's what I sort of want to just bring up today. I think that's the main point. Now, do you disagree? Do you think things like empathy, compassion, and love can't really be pushed too far, and then they're really just sort of no-cost sort of things that you can implement in your life and, hey, just love everybody, have compassion towards everybody with no discernment. As we talked about earlier, I think that's a faulty plan, but I believe if you enact all of these principles with discernment, that actually you'll have a better life than people who don't, right? So it's not that you shouldn't be empathetic. It's not that you shouldn't be compassionate or have love for the people that you talk to. It's not that you shouldn't pursue your own self-interest, right? It's that you should discern between when these things become pathological and when they're productive. All right, that's going to be it for this week, guys. So if you would, hit the like button and the subscribe button if you haven't already. Also hit the notification bell to be notified when content just like this drops. Also, you can head over to ThinkSpot and Locals. We've got communities over there having really nice conversations that you can't have here on the big tech sites like YouTube and Twitter. All right, lastly, Logocentric is fan-funded, so if you'd hit the link in the description, you can drop a donation of your choice. We are an independent show, so every little bit helps. And I just appreciate you guys stopping by and watching the episode today. I'm Logocentric. Thank you for watching.